Okay, Nebraska fans, Friday night, did you get that little tickle? That feeling in the back of your throat like, oh God, oh no, it's happening again. Please no, please don't, please. And then it happens. I realize we've pumped a lot of sunshine about Nebraska, Ari, but I feel like this is the time when the folks in Nebraska need it the most, because I think they're down pretty bad over this loss to Illinois. Nebraska is now 3-18 in one-score games since the start of 2021. But I don't know. Yes, they lost to Illinois. Yes, there were opportunities to win. Dylan Raiola missed a wide open receiver in the end zone that would have won them the game. They went completely backward in overtime. It was not great. But I don't look at this as Nebraska being cursed and not being able to win these types of games. I look at they lost to a pretty good Illinois team that is going to beat a lot of people like this.
Yeah, when I think about the Nebraska, here we go again moments, I think about teams that they should be beating pretty handily, where they're turning the ball over constantly, making dumb penalties, bad mistakes, all those things. And of course, the Dylan Raiola throw that would have won them the game there late in the fourth quarter is a tough break. But, I don't chalk that up to Nebraska being cursed. I chalk it up to, the kid's still a freshman and mistakes are going to happen. So when I watch the game, I think it's very easy. And even myself on Twitter was making parallels to like, oh boy, here we go again. But when the dust settled from the football game, Andy, I don't know that I felt like this is just like Nebraska-ing the game off. I think that Illinois is a very good football team. And I think that they made some mistakes because sometimes teams just lose to other good teams. Now, maybe I got a little bit over my skis with Nebraska, putting them as a 7-0 team going into the Ohio State game. I still think they can be 6-1. I think they're a very solid football team. And frankly speaking, are still very much on track to making the jump forward this year that they wanted to make. Like we weren't talking about college football playoff before the year. We were hoping, if you're a Nebraska fan, to, get to a bowl game and show signs of improvement to build around Dylan Raiola going into the offseason. And with a game at Purdue coming up to bounce back, I think that this Nebraska team is going to be just fine. I don't know that this is the end of the world for them, even though it probably hurts when you had the game in the bag at home on Friday night.
Now, we all saw Purdue as Notre Dame's get-right game, and Notre Dame very much got back on track against the Boilermakers. This is a little different circumstances because you're playing at Purdue. It's going to be an 11 a.m. local kickoff. It'll be a little sleepy. I don't think the Purdue fans are going to be probably more or as many Nebraska fans in the stands as Purdue fans. But this is the time that you come out and you put the hammer down. Like that's what Notre Dame did because they had to. They lost to Northern Illinois. Their season felt like it was going down the drain. They had to have a game like that. Nebraska needs a game like that because, look, the next two games after this, and I realize there's an open date in between the two of them, but Rutgers and Indiana. So Rutgers comes to Lincoln. They go to Indiana. Those are losable games. Those are very losable games, but they are also winnable games. Like the only game on Nebraska's schedule the rest of the way, Ari, that I think they probably cannot win is at Ohio State. They can win every other one of them, but they have to be in the right mindset. They cannot say, oh, we lost a one-score game. It's all happening again. Never mind.
Yeah, and listen, how much of that, because we saw the statistics, right? Like, they've lost their last 8 overtime games and haven't scored a touchdown in those games or something crazy like that. Like, we know the history here. But I also think, too, that if you give into the history and the history owns you in moments where, things can go the other direction, that becomes not just a curse, but something that, your players think about, your coaches think about, and it just kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know that I view this Nebraska team in the same light. They've got a different quarterback who's got a very high ceiling. Their coach is not known at the college level, at least for bad mistakes and stupid turnovers and penalties that cost you games.
Matt Rhule doesn't put sloppy teams on the field generally.
So, we're not talking about the same Scott Frost era type grab ass. So, I really do believe that this team is headed in the right direction. I even tweeted after the game, and I wanted to get your take on this, but like in terms of a player to build a program around, I'm not sure that there's a better one in the country than Dylan Raiola in terms of the way that he fits Nebraska, his potential and his ceiling as a player, but also, the fact that he has personal ties to the program and all the things that we've talked about in the past. Like, they're in a very unique position, and I still believe to build something around this kid and be much better in year 2, 3, or 2 and 3 with him in the fold. So very exciting.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is game 4 for a true freshman quarterback. There aren't many true freshman quarterbacks that are going to be lights out in game 4. So he didn't play well at the end of the game. There is no skirting that issue. It was not good. But he played well most of the game. And I think as he gets more experience, like he's playing against Luke Altmaier, for example. Luke Altmaier started his career at Ole Miss. He learned, quite a bit from Lane Kiffin while he was there. He comes to Illinois. He was the starter for Illinois last year. Like, he wasn't this as a first-year starter at Illinois. The poise you saw on Friday night is the poise of somebody who's kind of been there and done that at this point. And Dylan Raiola has not been there and done that. He's never seen that. So imagine a few more games under his belt. Imagine another season under his belt. What that looks like in that situation, because the Luke Altmaier who started Illinois last year would not have played that well down the stretch of that game. But he gained the experience he needed to become that player. And he was awesome at the end of that game. I think you should be excited about what Dylan Raiola can be at the end of a game like that the next time around, because he's been there now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I do worry a little bit about his escapability just as a player. And I don't know if that's something that gets better as you get more acquainted with the game. Maybe it does. The overtime period just did not go well. Like, Nebraska had no answer for Illinois' pass rush and, all those things. But like, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe we have to have a discussion here at some point on the pod, Andy, about like Rutgers being undefeated and Illinois being undefeated going into October. Like, we have some teams in this conference now that aren't just pushover teams that lose 35 or 40-0 every week. And Nebraska, though much improved and, has some really good pieces in place, isn't out of the woods yet in the sense of like, hey, they're just going to beat everybody that they play. And I made a mistake assuming that they would, So like, I think that we're learning a lot, as much about other teams in the Big Ten right now as we are about Nebraska. And I think that, Nebraska is probably more in line with the team that's showing the improvement, but maybe not necessarily in the upper echelon yet. And that's okay, because they weren't supposed to be yet.
Yeah, I think Nebraska and Illinois are kind of in similar places, which is why at the end of regulation, they were tied. So that at that point, it's who plays better in the next series. And that was Illinois on Friday night. But I have a feeling if you play that game again a few times, there'll be sometimes Nebraska is the better team. So, and that's what Nebraska is building toward. Like you said, the idea is improvement. The idea is make a bowl game, make it a decent bowl game. Because I think making a bowl game, they're going to be able to make a bowl game. And I realize, like, the Nebraska fans are like, please don't say that. Please don't say that, because we got stuck on 5 wins last year and we could not get off of 5 wins. I get it. And I get it that you look at the schedule now and you see Rutgers in Indiana and it's like, oh God. But have some faith. It's going to be okay. Your team is getting better. You are not cursed. Now, as long as nobody says they're going to eat dog poop or shove a burrito where the sun don't shine or do anything else that could potentially curse their team, your team is not cursed. Your team is not cursed. And by the way, Florida State's curse has been lifted, so the guy probably ate the poop. So, Nebraska fans, hang in there. Don't say anything stupid to curse your team, because your team is not cursed.